Hey, yo, it's welcome to a Monday night therapy session. Well, there's two championship games going on right now. Currently, Tennessee leaves Texas A&M in the College World Series final. Who are you for? Texas A&M or Tennessee? Let me know in the comments. Let me know. And then you've got Florida. I don't even know what their team name is. The Edmonton Oilers and Florida facing off in the last score. Well, it's the end of the first, and it's 1-1. Panthers, the Florida Panthers, which, uh, I kind of, there's two things about the hockey thing. Number one, the Canucks haven't won it for a while, so it's okay if they win. And plus, they would have to come down back from a 3-0 deficit, and that's pretty cool. I don't really have a battle in that. My family does enjoy playoff hockey because my son's fiance played goalie, and playoff hockey is where everybody gets violent as hell, and the refs don't call anything, and it's a lot different than the regular season. And then you got Texas A&M. Let's see what we got over there. Noah Chestnut says, "Fuck Texas A&M." Charles Hullett says, "Go Vols." I guess those are kind of two of the same thing, aren't they? James Boardman makes a good point. Tennessee, because fuck everything about Texas. Texas A&M, from my understanding, has never won a national title in any sport, any major sport, and this could be their chance, which I think is kind of cool. I kind of look at it and go, if I root for them for this, would that mean that we get to win a basketball tournament game? Because that would be a big get over the hump thing. And I don't, I know about Trader Trev, and he's a Texas A&M. I don't really give a shit about that guy. Whether the Aggies win or not is no reflection on him, although I'm sure he'll claim it as part of his process. The guy did do some good things when he was at Nebraska. He just kind of went a little too far, I'd say, with the, that's pushing the stadium expansion when they weren't ready to do that. It's a shitty time to do it. Put it this way. Do you think we're better off now without him than we were with him? Because I do. I think we're better off without him. I think he did his bit and he moved on, and if he's in a better place, that's great. And I think Nebraska's in a better place with Troy Dannon. Excuse me. Yes, I am going fishing. Let's see. I actually had an intro. I'm going fishing this Saturday for a week. I thought first, here's the thing. I was going to have my cardiologist on tonight and was going to interview him about being a heart attack survivor and what he sees and dealing with medical stuff and things like that. And that might have been interesting, but he didn't get back to me in time before I already created this whole show about me going fishing, and all you guys kiss my ass. But so we're going to talk about fishing, and we're also going to talk about, well, let's get some Nebraska football out of the way. Ooh, Aaron Keene says, imagine if Trev would get a Corn Nation t-shirt before Greg. I've offered to send him. He just never tells me what he wants. So Thursday night, you can all gang up on him because I won't be there Thursday night. Gang up on him and tell him that I have said, you pick what you want and I'll get it to you. And then he never does. So there you go. G Bro says, hello from South Bend. Hi, South Bend. Yeah, there. Aaron Keene says, let chat pick his shirt. That's a good point. You guys remember the bug eater shirt? If you're on YouTube, you saw me do a poll about Nebraska bug eater shirt. I may get those up before I go to Canada, or I may get those up after I go to Canada, but those will be coming in July. And Cornhusker Corner says, Minnesota, the state of lakes, right? Lots of good fishing. I'm here in Texas, and it's so hot, live bait melts. I can believe that. Minnesota is actually an excellent place to fish. And if, I like it here. I like that. I don't mind the cold. I do. I'll get a bitch about it when it's cold. But, the lakes are kind of cool. I grew up hunting in Western Nebraska when I was a kid. People from all over the nation came to hunt where I grew up that came to hunt pheasants. And as a little kid, I was often out with the whole executive crew of Dutch Master Cigars was one year. I can't remember some of the other CEOs or executive people that we had to go around with, but I gave all that up to go to Minnesota and go fishing, and it is nice, and the lakes are beautiful. And I'm not trying to be rude. I grew up in Frontier County. We had Cambridge Lake, and we had Red Willow Lake. And when I go back and look at those lakes now, we had Wellfleet Lake's a little tiny lake. And when I look at those lakes now, I can't believe we fished them because they're just, excuse me, mud. Good grief. And the lakes in Minnesota, when you get up north, you get it kind of further away from the cities. I mean, the lakes are so clear, you can see 12 to 15 feet in the water, and it's absolutely beautiful, I don't know if I drink that water anymore, but I'm going Saturday or Thursday. My grandnephew is flying up here to Minneapolis, and he and I are going to drive, which means he's going to drive us to Canada, and we're going to be somewhere near Winnipeg. I don't really know where we're going. I don't have to know anything. All I know is that I have to show up with fishing equipment at this point. Aaron Keene says, what are you fishing for? Walleye, sawguy, smallmouth, pike, muskie? You got a lot of those right. There's apparently like 6 fish you go for in this lake, and walleye is one of them. Smallmouth bass, pike, and muskie are the other ones. Perch, which you probably catch to eat. And then which one am I missing? Lake trout. Lake trout. And here's the thing. I used to own a boat. I had a boat for like 20 years. It wasn't fancy. It was a 15-foot tri-hull, I think a Lumacraft. Ugliest son of a bitch in boat on a trailer that looked like shit. And I liked that because nobody asked, people didn't bother me to go on my fancy boat. I had a 20-horse Merc. And over the years, after I had my heart attack, I had to get rid of it because the 20-horse Merc got really old. And it's not so bad when you're younger and you can pull on it a couple times and it'll get started and everything will work right. But when you got to pull on it 20 times, it's shit still ain't working. Then it's a little bit too much. So this year, already earlier this year, my oldest son and I, he likes going fishing. We've caught some bass. You saw the YouTube thumbnail. My wife is not here. She's on a mission trip. And I'm going to just say this out loud. I got to figure out how to get a boat again. Because this whole standing on the shore shit and trying to fish through milfoil really sucks. Yeah, that or I got to get better friends that let me come to their cabins in northern stuff. All right. Going back to Aaron's thing. I want to catch a large muskie on this trip. Not my understanding is about Canada fishing is this. My nephew is planning this trip. He's been up there before. My understanding is when you go to fish in Canada, these are just like slut fish. They're whore fish. They'll hit anything you throw out there. And I am looking forward to that because I would just like to catch some large fish. I haven't caught a large muskie for a while. I haven't caught a large pike for a while. I haven't caught any smallmouth bass for a while. I'm not a very good walleye fisherman, and I don't really care about walleye. And I say that, that's to make up for it. I don't care about walleye because I'm not very good at it. They're really picky. I would like to catch smallmouth, and I think 5 out of those 6 fish in this lake I'm really interested in getting. Perch, you can just catch those. They're just, whatever. Charles Hullett says they let you into Canada. Well, I guess I'm going to find out. I got a passport for this. The first passport I've ever had in my life. Fred. Oh, okay. Aaron Keene says your wife is on a missions trip. I knew she was a saint. She is a saint. She's the only thing that keeps me probably alive. Dana Williams on Facebook says mosquitoes large in Manitoba. I don't know. I'm going to find that out. I would imagine they are. There has been so much flooding around here, and the mosquitoes are terrible. And But I imagine we're going to have to coat ourselves. I always, better living through chemicals. That's what I believe. Real quick, we're going to go over to it's the bottom of the sixth. Tennessee's up 3-1. Nebraska has picked up. What have we picked up today? We picked up a running back, a 3-star running back who was reclassified into the 2024 class. So he will be here in the fall. Mecky Nelson, I think it was. And the interesting thing about him is he's coming to school. We have a lot of running backs. And here's the thing with that. I mean, we picked up the NAIA quarterback guy, which I think is really interesting because, well, number one, it gives us another guy for depth. Number two, it gives us a guy who looks like he can throw the ball and run an offense, and he has experience. I don't think NAIA to Division I, is it a huge jump? I don't think it's enormous. I think you can find that out, but it's a guy who can eat up quarters if we need him to. The other thing that it really does with this quarterback dude is give us more depth so they can use Heinrich Harburg, I think, for, what he's good at, like running option plays. You don't want to put Heinrich Harburg out there and get him beat up and killed, and then suddenly you have 2 scholarship quarterbacks. So this guy gives you another option, no pun intended, where Heinrich Harburg could, run power quarterback plays. He could run wildcat type stuff, single wing, that kind of stuff. So I think that it amazes me we're still picking up players. They're really fixated on these girls eating ice cream right now. Okay. That's kind of wild. Where was I? Oh yeah, the quarterback thing. I think they're continuing to add players. What's our roster size now? Like 600? Barbecue with Neil says hi. Hi, Barbecue with Neil. Aaron Keynes comes back with what roles does mini stalking play in the recruiting effort? Probably bringing in more quarterbacks, it looks like. I think I didn't get the chance to read this article, but it's my understanding that Sam McCune wrote an article about how Matt Rule has this plan for his roster, and I think we are about, what was it, 150 players, which seems like a lot. And how this settlement I've talked about, the House lawsuit and things like that, or they are negotiating to limit the size of the roster. And they're going to eliminate the play or the walk-on positions, and people are upset about that. Here's the thing with this. If this goes through the House settlement, if this goes through, schools are going to have to elect to pay out between $17 and $22 million a year to their student athletes, which, are we still going to use that term? So if you limit the roster size down a little bit, it's obviously going to save somebody money so they can pay other athletes just besides football. Everybody will want schools to pay all their football players as much as possible so they can compete with the Ohio States of the world. Is that how it's going to work? I don't know if that's how it's going to work. I would imagine you have to divvy up some of that money for basketball and volleyball and other sports, baseball, if you want to compete. But I think that the idea that you're going to have 140 players, those days are going to be gone. I would expect them to have a limited roster size to around 100, 105. I'm sure that the Big Ten and the SEC will kind of push that, and the smaller schools will push a smaller roster size. That way that they get more players. Because you remember back in the old days, back before there was scholarship limits, teams like Nebraska and Oklahoma used to gobble up players so that other teams couldn't have them. And I think that's what you see when it comes to the roster size of what argument is going to be had there. The other thing is there won't be able to be walk-ons because they basically, where we're going with all of this, I've talked about this before, everybody's going to be ruled as an employee at some point. And you can't have walk-ons wouldn't fit in that scenario at all. so that they won't exist. You can't have players come in where you're not paying them, and you can't have players coming in unless you don't exert control over them, which isn't going to work at all because they'll be ruled as employees. I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job of explaining that. Here's the thing. You either get paid or you don't get on the team. That's what the future is going to look like. So, well, James Boardman says interns. See, I don't think that'll fly. It'll be interesting. There's been some talk in Congress about passing antitrust laws, but I don't think our Congress, well, they can pass gas, but that's about it. Roger Moore asks, is it confirmed Nebraska will be on the west sideline? As far as I know, I haven't heard any more about that for a while. But I'll be honest with you, because that's what I do. They used to call me Honest John. June is the crappiest month for this. That's why I thought I'm not going to do a show, but then I'm not going to do a show next week. So I thought, I miss you and you miss me, right? But June is just, every June I look at myself and I say, why do I do this? Why do I should just be like other normal human beings and not do this and just sit around, watch TV and just have one job, my IT job, where I make my money and then I just become a turd the rest of the time. And then every June I say this to my wife, maybe I should quit. She'll go, you going to watch college football all day, every Saturday in the fall? And I'll go, yeah. And then that's what she's there for. She's there to be a saint and to draw me back to reality. And she does a very good job of both those things. Okay. Still 3-1, bottom of the sixth. All the Aggie fans clapping. 2 outs for Tennessee. This is getting down to it, isn't it? What else going on? We added a running back. We recently added a 4-star linebacker. I already hit the roster size issues. What are you guys doing, June? I already talked about my crappy attitude, everything. The other thing is this, a lot of off-season content, and I don't mean to be rude to anybody. A lot of off-season content is like the Mount Rushmore for Nebraska and who's the best, running back of all. These would be interesting if we had good teams over the last 5 to 10 years. We certainly have had a few good players, but we haven't had any good teams. So it's the same conversation year after year. And I can't do that. I'm old and crusty and I've covered that ground too much. Charles Hullett, you did send me a DM on Twitter today. I read somewhere that the Iowa receiving corps last season had a total of 754 yards and 3 TDs. One guy had 300 yards to be their leading receiver. Somebody on Iowa's team was picked up for what basically is drunk driving, on my understand. That was something else I was supposed to write down, but I had to take a call right before this and help my brother for a little bit. That's my excuse. Brown, here it is. Iowa actually sent out a little press release thing. University of Iowa football student athlete Caleb Brown was cited for operating while under the influence in Iowa City early Sunday morning. And Brown is subject to established university protocol regarding the UI Student Athlete Code of Conduct and the rules and regulations set for members of the football program. Brown, a junior wide receiver from Chicago, caught 22 passes for 215 yards and a touchdown in 11 games last year for the Hawkeyes. So that sounds not good when you have one of your leading receivers. This is the time of the year when most of the news that comes out about a football program is normally bad. The transfer portal and the way that we are recruiting and all that shift and everything has changed that news cycle. James Boardman also points out Mike Riley's wife, Dee, passed away at 70. And you kind of look at it. I turned 62 this June. And, when you're young, you look at 62 and 70, you think, wow, that's old. And then you get here and you think that isn't old at all. So condolences to the Riley family. That sucks. All I know is I want to go before my wife does. That's what I know. Justin Timberlake has made the news lately. He's playing for Iowa. He's not playing for Iowa. But he's made the news lately. We're stretching here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to fishing. And here's the thing about fishing. I didn't fish a lot. At least I don't remember my earlier life fishing a lot. You didn't really have the opportunity with the massive amounts of lakes, I think. At least I didn't have the opportunity to go fishing a lot when I was younger in Nebraska. I do remember being a kid and going down to Red Willow Lake and pulling 600 crappie out of the lake when we were young. We would go with this guy the guy trapped a lot of game and he sold a lot of furs. And we literally would go down and just pull as many crappie out of the lake as we wanted. And this is why they have fishing limits now, because you can't go into a fishing population when they're spawning and just slaughter them and expect to have that happen year after year. So, by the way, I have no idea if I'm supposed to get a license to go to Canada. I don't know if there's fishing limits. I don't imagine I care, because I think most of the stuff we're going to be doing is going to be catch and release. Like you don't eat muskie. You catch them, you put them back. I'm not going to eat pike. I know there's people that do. I don't know how to clean them. They have these fine Y bones in there that if you know how to fillet them, good for you. I'm not doing that. I would, even if I knew how to do the fillet thing with the Y bones, I'm not a pike eating guy. That's what perch are for. Large perch. I mean, you catch, pretty sizable perch in Minnesota. Husker and Hanover says you still need a license. Hopefully the resort we're going to, or the place we're going to, will provide a license, or maybe I'll end up in a Canadian jail, and that will be great. I have learned that I can't take my THC gummies that I use for headaches into Canada. You can buy it there, but don't bring your own, because apparently they get really pissed off at that. Paul Dallin says, you need a fishing license in Canada. The fines in Manitoba and Ontario are significant. Well, only if they catch you, right? Aaron Keene with future of headline, King of Coronation arrested by Mounties. That would be interesting. All right. I prepared for this. One of the things I did was, in order to do this trip, I actually went out and bought 2 new reels. And my son, my oldest son, he's about 31 years old now. I hope that's his age. But he looked at me, and we were out fishing a couple of weeks ago, and he looked at me and he said, "You had those reels since I've been alive." And he was right. And they were pretty crappy. And so I went out and bought a couple new reels, just spinning reels. Did you know that they sell bait casters now? Bait casters can be difficult to learn, because I don't know how to describe them. Anyway, what you do is you basically put your thumb on them and cast. And if you don't get the balance of the weight right compared to the tension of the line, of the drag, then you end up with a rat's nest, and it's horrible. And it takes you a while to learn these things typically. Well, apparently you don't have to do that anymore, because they sell digitally controlled bait caster reels that will actually control whether or not that thing's going to turn into a rat's nest. Now, I did not buy one because I'm cheap and I already have a bait caster, and I'm going to take with me to use. But so I have the new reels. I have all that stuff set up. I was going to go into Shields. I went into Shields and I started looking at all the stuff. And, I mentioned that I want to catch a large muskie. And I've caught like a 36-inch muskie just screwing around with some walleye line. I caught it on like 8-pound test line or 6-pound test line. It was kind of a miracle. And then I've caught a 44-inch muskie at a lake about 10 miles from here. I'd like to catch something bigger than that. And here's one of my primary weapons. This is called the Dr. Spoon. And now that I've gone through my tackle box, this actually is a smaller spoon than you probably should use for very large muskies. But going through my tackle box, I realized that last year when I was fishing with my nephew, that I lost some of my best spoons uh, because we were trolling. And my nephew, I love him dearly, but he can be spacey at times. I got caught on snags a few times, which I yelled at him to stop so I could get this thing out, and he just kept going, and it snapped the line off, and there went, that was like 2-3 of my favorite spoons in a row. But spoons good for pike, good for muskie. Let's see what else we got in here. You got the deep diver that looks like a perch. You got the big lip on there, so that's going deep. It's like I'm showing you all my toys. What else? What else do we have in here? The Daredevil spoon, right? The Daredevil. And the hell is this? The Mepps Giant Killer. I got a lot of those. Patrick Gerhardt comes in and says, now I got this big tackle box up here. I can't move. Patrick Gerhardt says, dude, nobody cares about your fishing. Tell us how Steve Albini influenced you. I don't know who that is, so he didn't influence me. Okay, what else we got in here? I'm not sure what else to do. You guys aren't making a lot of comments. And this is what June is about. There's not a lot of content going on out there. A lot of these damn things, your typical Rapala lures. These are all shallow. You basically are going to rip those across the water as fast as you can. And troll. You're going to troll with these a lot. And I like trolling because I'm a lazy person. I got a couple more toys to show you. This one, nice lure. Can you see that? What it is you drag this across the top of the water. It's got a small lip on it. It's got a lip on it. If you can see the lip, doesn't focus. Oh my God, you guys. This is what we do for June. But you drag this across the water. You can slow trawl it, or you can slow move it, and you can pop it a little bit. And what muskie or pike, in the early morning, they will come up in the shallows, and you will run this across the top of a weeds. And if they hit it, it's like an explosion in the water. James Boardman says, I call those things poppers. Poppers usually have a hollowed out front end to them so that they pop. This won't make that popping sound, but you can take a popper and pop it like that, and it'll go goosh, goosh. And the bass hate that. Because here's the thing about fishing. If you're going to use lures, they should serve one of two purposes, or both purposes. They should look like something a fish wants to eat, or they should be something that pisses a fish off so that it wants to kill it. So that's the purpose of the poppers are typically, you kind of make them look like frogs for bass going across the top of the water. And then, at the other times you piss them off. What else we got in here? I need to straighten shit out. Actually, I have straightened most of it out. This is one of my by the way, these are actually small musky lures. But okay. See this? This is one of my other favorites. Ouch. It's kind of like a lot like the last one. Again, the lip, you crawl it across the top of the water. I've caught some decent fish with that. And oh my God, we're 30 minutes in and I'm out of content. And I think, you got your typical stuff. Most of the time I'm actually fishing with a slip bobber, something that I didn't know existed until I came to Minnesota. But the reason why I like fishing with slip bobbers is because I'm lazy, and you can do just about anything with them. You're not gonna use a slip bobber for pike or for muskie, obviously, but you're going to use slip bobbers for walleye. Yeah, I've caught a lot of bass with slip bobbers and just a jig and a plastic worm. Okay. Any questions about fishing? Okay, Sam Eisenman, Sam Eisenman. Will you be here in town, Lincoln, for the Colorado game? I don't know. That's so far away. All I'm thinking about is going to fishing in Canada and surviving this trip. And here's the thing with Colorado. I think it would be unbelievably difficult to get tickets to that game. And I am not going to pay $6 million to go to the game. I do have a deal with a friend of mine that I might get a ticket from him, but we'll see what happens as the game gets closer. Paul Dallin says, I was watching a North Dakota, I assume, muskie fishing video, YouTube video. He was using a surface lure of a baby duck. It was kind of horrifying. They do that. Muskies will come up and eat the baby ducks, and they'll just attack them on the top water. I've had one just eat my bobber because I was flicking it, but yeah, they are big. They can be very vicious. They're a fish that you don't want to mess around with. Their front teeth are going to gash you. They're like a northern pike, a much more sophisticated northern pike, because northern pikes will just hit a lure and they'll just mash it like a linebacker. A muskie will take a lure. For example, if you use some of them big sucker minnows that are, I don't know, could be a foot long sucker minnow on a big, huge bobber, they will take that in their mouth and they will just sit there, and you will pull up and think you have a log, and it's a muskie just sitting there with your freaking minnow in its mouth. And you have to be careful about how you fish for them. They can be a lot trickier than pike, because pike are just like, pike are just the dumb, we're going to hit that, bam. And then, and they're fun, pike are fun, and there's billions of them. Let's see. James Wardman says the NCAA is voting on unlimited coaching staffs this week. Sounds like it will pass. That just sounds. That's not a good idea. I think they can't just have coaching staffs. I guess. You know what? I just thought of it. What doesn't the NFL limit how many people can be on a coaching staff because they don't want to pay them? And you're looking at the same thing here, where you're going to end up paying, you're going to end up having money for schools. And if the top two, and I realize Nebraska is in really good shape for this. And we have a well-run athletic department that makes a profit, and we're fine with all of this because we can bring in money through the Big Ten contract. We can bring in money because people go to games, bring in money because people buy paraphernalia and shirts and stuff. But you've got to think about the whole of college football and whether or not this is good for the sport overall. And I don't think unlimited coaching staffs would be good for the group of five isn't going to be able to keep with that and compete with that. And it's going to make things difficult for them. Highlander Gun says they have growler bears in Canada, John. What the hell is a growler bear? Yeah, people talk about bears in the wood. I've mentioned this before. What you don't want to run into in the woods is a moose, because they're really big and they're just giant freaking animals, and they're really erratic. In other words, they can get freaked out when you run into them, and then they just go, well, screw you, I'm stomping you life right out of you. Whereas bears, normally, they just want food. They're just like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, you got the picnic basket. Okay. James Boardman makes a good point that says, do Tennessee athletes receive nil if they are volunteers? Very good one, James. I already hit that one. Aaron Keene, we caught a 3-foot muskie once. Rapala shad wrap was sideways in its mouth with all treble hooks buried, and we had no pliers. Had to use a big bass jig to get the hooks out while he snapped at us. Fun times. The other thing is about muskies and pike is they can literally take they could take a lure like that. Normally, if it's only got one hook, you like have three hooks. The ones I showed you have three treble hooks. If it's got one or two of those into it and not all three, they can just spit those out, kind of like you'd spit out some really shitty beer. So when you're pulling them in and you're kind of leaning over the boat, you need to remember to keep your head back because they can throw the lure right up into your head. And then then you get treble hooks in your head, and nobody likes that. Do they? So maybe people do. I don't know. It seems to be something for everybody out there. Charles Hullett says, I don't like the idea of a gigantic coaching staff for one sport at the expense of other sports. I don't either. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how this all comes out in the next couple of years. Cornhusker Corner. Well, now the fishing stories are coming out. Cornhusker Corner says, I once caught an alligator gar off the dock of a marina, got it out of the water, almost got it on the dock, and it snapped the line. Those are freaky, weird fish, man. They're like prehistoric, some kind of thing from hell when you pull them out of the water and they're just like, I don't know, they start talking to you and shit like that. And okay. Charles, thank God you guys are having comments because I'm running on fumes here. Charles Hullett says there's some good beer in Canada, like Ricard's Red, Okanagan, Alexander Keith's did the tour there, and then there's Sleeman's. You know, I hit 4 years of sobriety in April, and the further I get away from out drinking, the less I remember about it. But oh come on, there's the Labatt's, Moosehead. There were some few Canadian beers that I always used to enjoy. All right, what else we got? Bottom of the seventh, Tennessee's still up 3-1. You know, these have been good games. I don't know if many of you attended the College World Series. Again, this year it's been in Omaha, and you've seen a lot of people give Omaha really good compliments, which is really good. It's really nice that Omaha has this event there every year. My understanding, it's like 300 degrees. And Tennessee just hit a homer that the guy couldn't, just cleared the wall, and the guy tried to get it. So Tennessee goes up 4-1. Aaron Keene says, are you pitching the gravy truck idea in Canada? You know, because poutine and shit. You know what? I haven't talked to Canucks for a while. I used to deal with them a lot when we were doing Boy Scout and stuff. You know, they're apparently Canada troops or something. Canada, every once in a while, we do a winter camp out, and a troop from Canada would show up. You know, and they were always nice people to talk to. So I look forward to going up there. You know, it's not like I haven't been there before. I just haven't been there for a while. I spent a week in Vancouver once for a technology company, and Vancouver is an absolutely beautiful city. And it was kind of funny when the training started for what we were doing. The guy, there was all these people from Canada coming to Vancouver, and then there was some Americans like me. And the guy stood up and he said, I need to tell you all about how to deal with the homeless people. He goes, you Americans, you don't have to listen to this. You already know. And I was like, what the hell? So Vancouver was the only city at that time that actually experienced homeless people. I also spent like a week in Toronto, and Toronto is, it's a nice city, except when you go over to I think Quebec's right next door, and then you get into all the snotty French people. James Boardman says, do you prefer to be an active fisher casting and reeling in, or would you rather just sit, chill, and bobber fish? Well, honestly, it depends on the situation. I am lazy. I like mixing it up. I don't mind casting and reeling, doing lures for a while, but honestly, I'm old and I'm out of shape, and standing there and doing this 300 times, you get worn out from that. And put it this way, let me answer this. Whatever works. If I'm in a lake where they're going to hit wraps, I'm going to throw wraps. If I'm in a lake where they're going to hit live bait on a bobber with a jig or something like that, then that's what I'm going to do. I don't. I try to mix it up to just see whatever you can get going. I prefer probably bobber fishing most of the time, but I'm active with it. Here's the thing: the slip bobber, I don't use it just throw it out there. I use it like a lure. I usually throw a slip bobber out there, and then I'll actually work it coming back and throw it out again, which is kind of weird, but it's worked for me. Um, Paul Dallin says Tennessee's up 5-1. Now it's up. He's safe at the plate, throws his helmet down, and it's 6-1. And it's looking like the Aggies are not going to win their first national title in a major sport. Oof. James Boardman says catcher missed the tag. It apparently looked like he did because the ball got there in time. Ooh, boy, that's kind of okay. Where was I at here? Paul Dallin was saying my boss is an Aggie. He was at the College World Series this weekend. He was gushing about how terrific the College World Series was and how great the city was. See that? That's a nice thing for Omaha. Nice thing, and Highlander Gun says sit and chill if you're eating gummies. I just eat a tiny bit of one because it helps with the massive headaches I get from the brain injury. Charles Hullett says, are you going to have Roland Martin videos on loop while you're fishing? No. I might ask my great nephew or grand nephew. What do they call him? The son of your nephew is what? Your great or grand nephew? I might have him take videos of me so I can share them. Probably doing something stupid like swearing a lot. Oh, it looks like he did miss the tag because he caught the ball on this side of his body and the runner was to the other side. And of course, they're going to challenge that. Paul Dallin says, who is Roland Martin? Roland Martin, I think, he's like Bill Dance. He was a fishing guy, had a fishing show and all that stuff. Paul Dallin, is he the fishing show guy? He's one of them. I haven't watched, you see a lot of social media people that are doing fishing stuff. I don't even know just who does fishing shows anymore because I haven't watched one of those for a while. I've seen a few of them on social media, but I don't pay attention to them religiously. Highlander Gunn says, didn't he do a comedy variety show in the 60s? I think you're thinking of Rowan Martin of Laugh-In. I think that was Rowan Martin. I'm digging way back in the cockles of my brain memory. And Jason Reeves says, if we can't talk about football, can we mention the corporate oligarchs that seem to be directing Florida State and Clemson to the Big 12? We can talk about football. I just don't think there's a lot going on. Is there? I mean, do you guys really think there's a lot of content or a lot of stuff going on with football right now? The Florida State, see, the other thing is this is my time of year, typically June, where I'd stop paying attention to a lot of the stuff. I have been doing more history work and history video stuff. And I am about to release a video about Pop Warner, which I don't know if most of you care about, but he was one of the most innovative coaches in college football history. Paul Dallin, recruiting. We do need a recruiting writer at Corn Nation. And Nate McHugh and I have been covering that for a little bit, but it'd be nice to have somebody that actually focused on it because let me ask you guys this. Has recruiting become less important because of the transfer portal stuff? God, I have a hard time with the word portal. It seems to me that people are paying a lot less attention to recruiting than they used to in the past because you kind of look at the transfer portal has muddied all of those waters. You kind of look at him and you go, okay, we got a new 4-star linebacker. Is he going to be here more than a year? Well, you hope so, but then you don't know because they might get a better offer. One of the things I did not bring up earlier about the reduced roster size is this. I think that when you go back and you look in, you say, it will be sad that we don't have walk-ons, that people can't prove themselves that they belong at Nebraska. Well, they'll still have the chance to prove themselves because there'll be more opportunities probably at a smaller school. So they can go to a smaller school and prove themselves there, and then they'll get more nil offers to move up. And I think that that's a better idea than maybe still, just not being able to play, not being able to get on the field. I do know there is always a place for walk-ons in a program. Milt Tenneper made that very clear in his book. Can you guys hear my cat? Anyway, Milt Tenneper made that very clear in his book that scout team players and walk-on players, most of them had a very clear role on the football game, in the football team, and that was to help the team play for the next, prepare for the next week's opponent. We have the most obnoxious cat on this planet. His name's Leo, and that's what he does, is he bawls for attention. And the cat and I have an agreement. I don't kill him, and he doesn't kill me, because we don't get along very well. And there you go. That's the cat. He's a beautiful orange tabby, but he bites. And when he bites me, he bites. He just out of anger. One of those things where you're petting him and then they start biting you. And he bites me viciously, not like love bites. He attacks. You'll attack your arm or hand. Anyway, Jason Reeves says it's not nearly as obnoxious as Greg's tap dancing dog. I need to watch more. Let's see. Wait a minute. Aaron Keene says there are more perch-colored lures in your tackle box than news on football right now. That's true. Cornisker Corner says the history stuff is great. I've been on a Dan Carlin kick, so I could welcome a new college football history video. There's some I want to get done before the season because it does take me a while to do these. It's not a Nebraska-based channel. I hope to do a video about this year, the Texas and Texas A&M rivalry will re-engage. And I think that's exciting for college football. Those two teams hating on each other. What would be nice is if Texas A&M had a much bigger presence on Twitter than they do. Because you see the videos of them doing their weird, Aggie stuff with the butt swiggles and the cheers or yells, and it would be nice to have more of them to just defend themselves so we could attack them about how just goofy they look doing some of that shit. But the Texas A&M rivalry will commence again this season. I'm excited for that. Let's see. Jason Reeves comes back with, the good insiders seem to have stepped up their intensity that FSU and Clemson are headed to the Big 12 with the added incentive of State Farm putting their name on the whole fucking conference. And then Paul Dalen says the State Farm Big 12. Seriously, are you shitting me? There is talk of them selling rights to conference names, and excuse me, for as far behind as they are, let's face it, the Big Ten and the SEC are way up here, and they have a lot more money than everybody else. And in this new world, it's going to require more money to compete. And it's tell you guys, comments completely throw me off. I can understand why they would want to do that. I mean, there's people like, it should be a name and you should be like sacred or something like that. But let's face it, the Big Six became the Big Eight, became the Big 12, and now it's still the Big 12, and now it's going to be the State Farm all Big 12. And I guess that makes sense from a certain standpoint. The other problem is, and I keep mentioning this, is you have enrollment dropping all over the place. And earlier I thought, why does Matt Rule want 150 players? Why would you want that many players? Do you realize that like the roster limit normally to go to fall camp is 105 players, right? So 150 players in the fall. What's that mean? That means that's 45 more guys that you have to get a phone call at 2 a.m. from the police or from somebody that this guy just busted up a bar or did this stuff. You know what I mean? Ugh. I that whole thing, handling that and dealing with that just seems like way more than it needs to be. And earlier today, here's where I was going with this. Earlier today, I had the thought of, well, maybe this is how Nebraska plans to increase its enrollment, is to have massive rosters of everything. And there you go. You know, James Boardman says, I'm buying the naming rights and calling it James Boardman's Big 12. I like that idea. You know that they've also approved having corporate logos on the football field. So I wonder how much it would take to get a Cobby logo, the Cobby logo right up there. Get that on the Nebraska football field. William Walker says, oh, I thought you would be a fishing hole. Not yet. This is the show before I go. And certain things have to fall in place before all this happens. But, and then he follows it up or breaking into a vape shop. Paul Dallin says, John, the Big Ten and the SEC are where people are. They are now in states with 83% of the U.S. population. That's not something the other conferences can catch up to. They can catch up money-wise if they just sell as much of themselves as they can. And there's been talk about private equity coming into this stuff. Well, private equity, you can't sell Memorial Stadium, okay? These are all like land grant public university. You can't really somebody can't buy equity in a state university. At least I don't know how they could. It's state, it's public loan property. You can't just sign that over. Now, a conference is actually private, so there's probably ways that you could get around that and invest in equity in the conference. Although I'm not sure what that gives you. Normally, I mean, if I had a shit ton of money that I was going to go invest in the Big 12. I would just make sure that the terms are such that I make more money than the economy regularly would make me. In other words, if I can get 5% in a bank account, I'm going to make sure I can get 8% out of this deal. That's how I'd look at it. Yeah, I wouldn't have to own anything. I just give you a shit ton of money and you'd give me that shit ton of money back with more money. So I think that's probably what we're going to see from some of these conferences. James Boardman, I'll talk him down to $3.50 on a $20 Buc-ee's gift card. I could do that. If somebody, maybe I should just call Keith Mann right now and see what the negotiating price starts at, and we could get a GoFundMe together. I'm certain they'd go for that. Highlander Gun says, get a Cobby tat, John. I'm not a tattoo guy. I've always had the strong belief that tattoos only make you more identifiable in a police lineup. That's, because think about it. Movies you watch, some guy's attacking another guy. The guy pulls his shirt up, and there's some kind of tiger on the side of his chest, and they look it up, and some Romanian tiger from a certain cult from Romania in 1455, and then they trace. That's how they get found. You guys with all these tattoos, you got them way too visible. You can't commit crimes with that kind of stuff and get away with it. And that is the kind of stuff you need to be thinking about. And you're probably thinking, well, I have no intention of ever committing crimes. Well, probably 98% of the people out there committing murders probably never thought, I'm going to go commit murders. They just showed up someday and shit happened. Okay. This kind of stuff should probably get me in trouble. Charles Hullett says, oh, come on, John, you have some scars like a belly button and probably at least one other scar. I don't, actually. It's amazing. I've been dead 20 minutes and I do not have a single scar on my body from that. because in order to save me, they put a stent in somewhere in here where you can't see that anymore, and they also put another stent in through my thigh. So no cigars, no tat or no scars from this. I'm getting worn down here. I do have this scar right here. This one imprint on my head is from a scar where my cousin Todd threw a pillow at me. I ducked and smashed my head into a table, and I cut my uh, cut my head wide open, and then we got in trouble for that. Okay. Owen Walker says, I feel the same way about tattoos, John, and I feel like I wouldn't look cool with one. You know, the other thing about tattoos is this. It's the top of the eighth. It's still 6-1. Okay. The other thing about tattoos is this. I know a lot of people that they have tattoos, and you say, well, why do you have that tattoo? And they'll say something like, it tells the story of me, or they, have a tattoo on their body because they want to remember a friend of theirs that passed away. Or a lot of them will say, it tells you who I am. Well, I don't want to ever do that, because sometimes I make up who I am. Like if I'm meeting a whole new group of people that have never met me before, I can just decide to become a priest right at that moment. And I can usually do that, pull that off for a while. But if I had a tattoo that said, go fuck everything, go big red, they'd be going, why would a priest have that? And you can't pull it off. So I get the idea that you want to tell people, or you want to symbolize something. I always wanted to symbolize pretty much generic. Now, because of the long hair, I can symbolize being a hippie or a homeless person, or like, I don't know, Willie Nelson. Somebody on YouTube keeps commenting that I'm Willie Nelson, but I can fit into those things really well, and then I can be whoever I want, whenever I want. Aaron Keene says he has a dent in his head, rumor has it. I do have a dent in my head. And, but it's disguised by all the hair. If I had to shave my head, then people are going, what the fuck is with your head, man? And then I'd have to make shit up. Charles Hullett says, just get a giant face tattoo on your forehead. You mean like having a third eye? This is why I thought I should just skip June, because this is where we go when there's June and there's not really real content to talk about, because, we're going to get into July. Next week, there's not going to be a show because I'm going to be fishing in Canada, but we're going to get into July, and then it's going to get a little bit better, because we are going to anticipate the release of EA college sports. We're going to anticipate Big Ten media days. We'll be starting to, do previews. By the way, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central, I will be talking to Big Ten Ted on YouTube, and I will be doing probably a preview of the Nebraska Cornhuskers with him. And he's going to ask me questions like, what does Nebraska need to do? And I am going to say what we all know is the right answer to that, and that is not turn the ball over, not throw the ball to the other team, not drop the ball when you're running with it and you're supposed to get into the end zone with the ball still in your possession. That's what Nebraska has to do to be successful. And, we can complicate it. It's not, you have to generate content. So I'm sure we're going to say a lot more than that. Aaron Keene says, John describes his desire to be able to blend into any crowd like he is a goddamn spy. Yes. Years ago when I was in college, I had like a mullet, but I didn't do the punk rock thing. Sometimes I'd spike it up, but mostly it was just a mullet, and you could fit into anybody with that. I mean, if you put on the uniform of a punk rocker, then you're a punk rocker. And then the punk rock thing could be an attitude too. But, when I looked generic, I could fit into any group I wanted to. And then that's something I enjoyed. I could infiltrate. And, you could listen, here's the thing. This one of the reasons why I never get into politics is this is how my life goes. And I'll give you this secret. If I am around a group of Christian people discussing religion, I am an atheist. If I'm around a group of atheists, I am Christian. And if I'm around a group of lefties, I'm typically not anymore, which is why it's no fun to discuss politics. Everybody gets so angry about everything. But I typically tend to be the opposite of everybody else because I'm a contrarian. And you can do that when you kind of look generic. Let's see. James Boardman, 68 days till kickoff. It's getting closer, thank God. I saw another one in here. James Boardman says on Ted's channel or yours. That'll be on Ted's channel. Tuesday nights, Andy Ketterson is going to be doing movies, sports movies. So there you go. Show up. He got a lot more response than any of us thought he was. Aaron Keene says, serious question. How is Todd doing? Chat wonders about him from time to time. Honestly, I haven't talked to Todd since the spring game or around that time frame. And it was a really short conversation. So he's covered baseball for us and did a really excellent job between him and Aaron, but I haven't talked to him for a while. Dan Yerk, I don't recognize your name from before. Look up the story of the fork tattoo. It is you, seriously. Okay, I'll look that up. Top of the eighth, Texas A&M, 1 out. It's now 6-3. They have Texas A&M has a dude on second. So this could be, this could be an exciting game. Owen Walker says, wow, you are an agent of chaos, John. Somebody honestly at my church, when you get on those small group discussions and I'm constantly bugging everybody else and not agreeing, said that I am a sharpener of others. I thought that was worth remembering. Okay. Jason Rees says, do we need to send a welfare check to Todd? I think Todd is doing fine. I just haven't talked to him for a while. We're over an hour and I made it through this far. So, I don't know if we're going to have wireless or any kind of internet where I'm going. It is out in the middle of nowhere, Winnipeg. And, like I said, I have looked it up on a map. My grandnephew is probably going to drive most of the way there, and we're going to see what happens. And I'm looking forward to this because, I don't have the boat and I haven't been able to get out fishing a lot, and I need to figure that out. I have secretly been plotting. I mentioned buying a boat again to my wife, and she's like, we don't have any place to put it. You'd have to store it. You'd have to put a hitch on something. We bought her a nice Jeep that she loves. She is not letting me put a hitch on that Jeep. So I don't know. We're going to, it's really hard to fish from the bank when you need to get out there. You need to get past the weed lines and stuff like that. All right. That's it. Let's see. July. I had hoped to have, like I said, when I started this, I had hoped to have my cardiologist on and we talk about heart attacks and surviving that and what it's like, just because, I like people to be more aware of what they're dealing with when they're dealing with all that stuff. Let's see. We'll have some more interviews and stuff like that. And that'll be time to get ready for football season. And I plan on doing some streaming of the EA college sports. I need to figure that out. Aaron Keene says, good luck with the fishing trip, sir. Thank you. I just hope that I don't get eaten up too much by mosquitoes and that it's a good time. And we all, Highlander Gun, if you see any bears, John, pretend you're going to Europe. Well, Quebec, Canada is just kind of like Europe extended, and I kind of, not really. Okay. Maybe with Quebec. All right. That's it for tonight. I still need to figure out an outro for this. There you go. There's a show. It's in the books. I hope you are doing well. Football season's not that far away, and we're certainly going to have more content coming. And that's it. I really do need to write a sign off. I said that every time I do one of these, don't I? Good night, everybody, and take care of yourselves. And you know what? Thank you for all the support you've given us on Corn Nation and on the YouTube channel and stuff like that. Tune into Andy and Greg and Minnie and Greg and Haas. And, we might actually expand some more depending before the season starts. We'll see what happens. And now I need to go see what the hell Leo wants. I'm sure he wants outside or food, or he's angry because nobody else is here but me, and he doesn't like me all that much. Good night, everybody.